What's going on, everyone? James Night Numbers here, and welcome back to another episode of the Political Freedom Fighters Podcast. Now, in this episode, I have a very special guest for all of you here this evening, or this afternoon, I should say. This person is running for U.S. House District 7 as a Libertarian, and I'm actually really excited to be talking with him this evening. So with that, I'm going to be introducing to all of you Maad Abu-Gazaleh. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How's life?
Life is going pretty good for me anyways. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, but I'm glad you're doing good.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, the first question I gotta ask you is, who are you and what do you do?
So, a brief background. I was born in Palestine, and I grew up in Saudi Arabia. And I came to the U.S. for the first time in 1979. I went to the University of Notre Dame. That was the first time I landed in America, was in Notre Dame Airport. And I think that background really kind of defines who I am. Because, I mean, if you imagine the governments that I grew up under, my formative years, growing up in Saudi Arabia, it's Sharia law, religious country, no rights by the individual. It's the government does whatever they want. There's no recourse. And then we spent our summers in the West Bank, visiting relatives in the West Bank. So that's the other part government I saw was a very brutal military occupation. So that's what I saw being authority. Authority was people who got in the way of your happiness, people who restricted who you were as a person. And so, I came here in '79, and I've just been active in the States. Once I got here, I really took advantage of this opportunity. I did some software business. Then I got into politics. I ran for U.S. Congress back in 2002 as a Libertarian, right when we were deciding whether to invade Iraq or not. And I said, I've come from there. I have some things to say about this. Isn't going to work out well. And you know how people were. I mean, I don't know. You seem like you might not have been 2000. Do you remember those years, or is that before your time?
I was born in 2001.
Okay, so you do remember. You were 1 year old. So 2002, the United States was deciding whether to invade Iraq on false pretenses or not. And I was begging people not to, and nobody was listening. So I decided to run for Congress to just be more vocal about it. And, this country decided we wanted to invade Iraq. They were dead set on it. At least the government was. And that was my first real fray into the political process back in 2002.
All right, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good background. So I guess we already went through your history, I guess. So why are you running for U.S. House District 7 as a Libertarian?
I think I sort of gave a background as to, or at least my motivation for choosing the Libertarian Party. My biggest concern is tyranny. I fear the government. I really do. I know what could happen. I see what's possible when a government has too much power. And I see that, I see inklings of that with ICE, with all the ICE raids, how everything's, you have no recourse. When ICE says you're going to go somewhere, you go somewhere. They do it in the dark of night, wearing masks. And, there's no lawyers around. It's really reminiscent of, life in the West Bank almost. It reminds me of that. So the Libertarian Party, to me, it has got that part right. Their biggest fear, or our party's biggest fear, is the tyranny of the government and the necessity for individual rights. That as an individual, doesn't matter what religion you are, what ethnicity you are, you have these inalienable rights, and that's rights against the government. It's not necessarily just rights against your neighbors, but these rights restrict your government. And this is the reason I loved America from afar, or the ideal of America, was when I was in Saudi Arabia, that I was like, this is what I really would help people thrive. is if they knew that the government couldn't infringe on their own individual rights, which we didn't really have. I didn't have growing up. And I looked at different parties. I dabbled with the Democratic Party because they seemed a little less pro-war, and I thought, war was going to be a big problem. But you saw what happened to Mamdani, his own party. He had to not only fight the opposition party, he had to fight his own party tooth and nail. They were trying to prevent him. Even after he was nominated, they ran their own establishment people against him. So the Democratic Party, the Republican Party are dead ends. They're part of the establishment. That means they're part of the problem. And, my focus in this campaign, and I just keep harping on this, is, I'm sure you've got issues. Everybody's got issues that differ. But the bottom line is, if all of us that are on the outside, being part of this rigged system that this, the uniparty, the Republicans and Democrats, they have this stranglehold, which is really corrupt. If we don't unite as a people against them and treat it seriously like it's a real war and start bickering amongst each other, then they're going to win. The establishment wins, and we're left out. So that's why I ran. Is I wanted to be a voice to unite the people and identify the enemy, which is the establishment is the enemy, right? It's not left and right. The enemy is the establishment.
I totally 100% agree. Now, before I ask before I ask you your opinion about your opinions on the Republicans and Democrats, I saw on the petitions page that you had to gather signatures to get on the ballot. You had to get 200. You did manage to get over more than that.
I got my letter 2 days ago saying I reached 215, and they're still counting. So I got more than I needed, and it scared me because I didn't want to pay. It's like $2,000 for somewhere around there for filing to run. And I didn't want to start in the hole. I've got enough of an uphill battle. So I said, this is a good opportunity to go out and meet people, get an idea what resonates with people. I'm not going to change my views, but I can at least identify what people are really concerned about and prioritize issues based on what people's interests are. So it started out really slow. I was doing like I was back in 2002 and I was knocking on doors, but things have changed since then. Since 2002, they've invented smart ringers, which allows people to see who's at the door. And once they see they don't recognize who's at the door, they'll turn the lights off and hush the dog, and nobody answers doors anymore for people they don't know. So I was like, how am I ever going to get to 200? I was like knocking on I was getting 2 doors to answer per hour. Not like the old days where, everybody would at least have to open the door to see who it is. And then they're stuck listening to your little spiel. So I was about ready to panic and figure I just had to pay the money when I just stumbled on to groups of people. Like this was a little bit before Thanksgiving. So I don't know if you're familiar with Trader Joe's, but I'm in the city of Wilmington, and we've got a Trader Joe's with a tiny little parking lot. So everybody's got to park outside. And that's the keys when you're gathering signatures is you got to be on public property. So you can't really be in a private parking lot. And so I just stood on the sidewalk and it was so easy, James. I mean, it was everybody's so pissed off. I mean, when they heard, when I told them, hey, I'm running, I'm just a regular Joe, regular Maad, I'm running for Congress because I think it's corrupt. They're just like, where do I sign? So just getting in front of people is all it took because people are ready. I think this is a much better opportunity for third parties than back when I ran 20 years ago, for sure. And so, yeah, I got my 200. I'm up to 215, probably going to end up with around 250. And just got to meet so many people that it was such an easy sell with. So many people that have really given up on the idea of Republican Democrat. They're just, I mean, a lot of them would end up if they didn't have a third choice, they would just vote whatever they normally vote, just because this is how the system works, is that the Democrats will, tell them, well, you got to vote for us, even though we're terrible, but we're better than the Republicans. The Republicans say the same thing. So they play that game and it works as long as there's no third party. That's going to work. I'm taking this seriously. I'm going to at least give them a choice so they're not stuck with some party they don't really like.
Yeah, and based on the petition page that I'm seeing right now, it says that you got 233 valid signatures. So
is that right?
Yeah.
That's news. That's news. So is that the state party?
The state board of elections. Yeah.
Excellent. That's good news. Yeah, I knew it was at 215. So yeah, 200 was the threshold. So I'm good to go.
That's awesome. Now the next question I got over is, what's your opinion on the Republicans?
Man, well, I'll tell you something. So first of all, they're pro-war. And we're talking not. I'm answering maybe a different question than you gave me. By Republicans, I'm thinking Republican RNC, the establishment Republicans, as opposed to individual Republicans. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
So they were. I had real problems with George Bush because he was the one who really drove the invasion of Iraq, and his whole cabinet was neocons. And neocons are bankrupting this country. They really took us the wrong way. They all got proven wrong, and they're still at it. They're still trying to get us into wars. So as long as the neocons, and now they're the Zionists that are taking the role of the neocons, pushing us into war with Iran and just trying to make enemies everywhere where we normally could just make friends, that people would normally be friends with us, but the neocons and the Zionists really just want us to go to war. It's pissing off a lot of people. So that, to me, and that's dividing the Republican Party, because I don't think that's where the Republican people are. I think the Republican people have enough problems to deal with at home. Republicans don't want to go to war, spend money on bombs, bombing children. That's not why they're paying taxes. So the Republican Party was split on that line, on anti-war versus pro-war, and their representatives are solid pro-war. So that's creating a big rift for the party, because there's a huge disconnect. And there's also another problem with them is that's on the international front. On the national front, the Republican Party has been pushing the line that we can't afford social services. Social services need to be done at the state and community level, or city and community level. So we need to just cut all the federal fundings for all the safety net, basically. And I think that's, what they're doing is disingenuous, because if I believe them, that what they really want is, they do believe that nobody should go hungry, nobody should die from lack of health care because they don't have the money. If they really believe that, they would follow through. They'd say, okay, the federal government we can't afford to keep paying for these services, hypothetically. Let's say you believe that. So where's the follow through? And if they just said, we're cutting the funding and then fend for yourselves, I don't believe that they really care. I mean, if they really cared about their people, the people that they're supposed to represent, they would say, if we cut SNAP benefits for low income people, what's going to happen, right? If you cared, you'd ask, what is going to happen if I do this? And if you really wanted the community to pick up the slack because it's maybe more efficient, the people that are being going to administer it are from the community, so they know how to do it fairly and without waste, whatever the Republican arguments are going to be, you'd follow through to make sure that actually happens. You'd say, well, we've got a certain budget. Let's use that budget to support these community organizations and make sure that they can pick up the slack once we back off, which I'd like the federal government to back off, because they keep dangling requirements on getting funding from them. It's like it's like an umbilical cord where they know we're reliant on them. So they've been putting restraints. I don't know if you're aware, like FEMA has a restriction that if you want to get FEMA aid, and this is obviously important for North Carolina voters, like for hurricanes, not that FEMA is ever on time with anything, but hypothetically, if you wanted FEMA funding, you have to commit to not boycotting Israel. You can look that up. It's an anti-BDS requirement to get FEMA funding. It's baffling. And it's just because if we want to get their funding, they get to call the shots about, what restrictions there are for us to get the funding. And the same goes with education. is in order to get federal education funding, you have to have certain curriculum. So that aspect of the limited federal government of the Republican Party, I agree with. I think that the party itself, the people running it, the RNC, are disingenuous about it because their motivation for cutting the funding doesn't seem to be, we think it'd be more efficient if it and done better if it was local, even though those are the words they're using, but they're not acting that. They're not acting as if they really want these services to be done.
Understandable. And apparently this seat is currently held by a Republican incumbent by the name of Daniel Rouser, I believe. Yeah, Daniel Rouser. So what's your opinion on him?
All I ask is, I'm actually, to be honest, I'm new to this district. I've been here 2 years now. So, I was asking about him when I wanted to decide, when I was trying to decide whether I should run or not, is like, I don't want to replace somebody who's maybe good. So my own research was he's paid by the lobbyists. He's paid for by the lobbyists. His top 3 funders are Big Pharma, Israel, and tobacco. Those are his main 3 PAC donors, lobbyists, which tells you something. And then the people said they never see the guy. They send them letters. They get boilerplate that doesn't even address their questions. He's really been he's not a popular. I mean, I would be more than happy to admit if he's popular or unpopular. He's just not a very popular representative. Because he doesn't really, he doesn't show up very often, and he's bought out by the lobbyists. So the combination doesn't really leave a good taste in people's mouths. And they call him, so even the Republicans call him a rhino. They don't think he's got real values anyway. That's I'm just repeating what I heard about him. To me, whether he's a rhino or not, it's not the issue. It's the fact that he's bought out. He's part of the problem. He's part of the establishment.
I can totally agree with that. So next up is the Democrats. What's your opinion on the Democrats?
Sometimes I have worse feelings about them. And again, I brought this up is when you look at the Mamdani race, and you look at what happened to Bernie Sanders, the people running the Democratic Party, again, we're talking about the Democrats themselves, the voters. We're talking about the people running the party are very pro-war. Biden was the one funding Israel, spending all our money funding Israel to bomb Gaza, which his own party is now like over 90% against it. But they're so corrupt, they're so bought out by lobbyists, the Democratic Party, that they were willing to sacrifice an election. Kamala Harris refused to go against Bibi Netanyahu, even though over 90% of their own voters said they weren't going to vote. There was an analysis that said that if they had just stopped supporting Israel, they might have won the election. But they were willing to sacrifice their own election just to appease their lobbyists. I mean, that's how corrupt the system is. And so do I dislike the Democrats more than Republicans? Probably not. I just dislike the corruption. It's just a mass body of corruption that's with money just being funneled in by the hundreds of millions from lobbyists who, these our representatives just give them billions back. So that's how the money flow is you get all this money going into the pockets of these politicians and then them voting on a tenfold return on that investment to the lobbyists. And the Democratic Party is corrupt to its base, the DNC. So whatever they're telling you about, we have all these values about, the safety net, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, they don't mean it. They don't mean it. When push comes to shove, they're just going to vote the way the lobbyists want them to. And you judge people by how they act, not what they say. And that's how I see them acting. Take ICE, for example. The very basic representation of their people against being just taken away in the dark of night is like everybody's saying, well, how dare Trump, have ICE picking up people all over the place. Well, where the heck are the Democrats? I haven't seen them. Are they on the street stopping them? Are they saying you can't do this? they're part of the game. It's all a game, and they're both part of it.
Absolutely. So, in this race, there is a Democrat that's running in this district as well. Her name is Kim Hardy. And since this is looking like this wants to be a safe, solid red seat, what is your opinion on her? And why can't she win the race?
Because she's not going to get the support of the party. I ran into people that work for her and say she's a wonderful person, and the people supporting her are at the right places that I wish, anybody in this district would be at, some of the anti-ICE rallies and things like that. And so I've never met her. I don't want there to be any talk about, I'm working with her or something. So I'm not going to get in any way connected with her. But I'm not going to, I don't think she has a chance because where's her party? If the party were out there, can you imagine Hillary Clinton or somebody coming out to Wilmington to stump for her, to get her fundraising? And the parties, they've given up on this race. The Democratic Party has given up on this race. It's like you said, it's red, and it's getting redder every year. If you look back historically at how the elections have gone, it was actually a Democratic congressman in this district about 12 years ago or so, and then it flipped, and then it's just been, the gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. So regardless of what I think of her as a candidate, she's not going to get the back. She doesn't appear to be getting the backing of her party. And so we'll see how it turns out, whether she gets out there and says the right things. But at this moment, she's on a trajectory. The Democratic Party is on a trajectory where they're caring less and less about this race. And so my positioning is, I actually want it to be a close race. I want her to do well, because I don't think she's going to win without her party's support. If she does, okay, at least there'll be some accountability, because then I don't think she's part of the establishment, but that remains to be seen. But my positioning is, if I get the number of votes that's the difference between the Republican and the Democrat, right? Let's say the Republican gets 60%, let's say 55%, the Democrat gets like 40%, or let's say 30%. If I'm the gap that's the difference between the two candidates, that means I could make the difference. That means that if I choose to support one side or the other, that party could win if I'm the difference in the gap between the two parties. So a closer race would increase my relevance, if that makes sense. So I actually want her to do well, even though I don't think she's going to win, and I don't want to be negative about it. That remains to be seen. But you're asking me what I think about her, whether she can win. As it appears from now, and I can be proven wrong, it doesn't seem that the party is going to support her. The trajectory of the party has been dramatically getting less effective in this race. So unless something changes, I don't see that's going to be any kind of a stop. It's not going to stop the Rouser from just taking the money and doing what the lobbyists tell him to do. There's no accountability.
Absolutely. So, anyways, let's go over your platform. What is your platform?
The main issues is, one of the things is I do want to have a balanced budget. I think the reason everything appears to be getting more expensive is not that what's really happening is the currency is being devaluated. It's getting debased because the government's not even really trying anymore to balance the budget. The budget keeps it, and even with Doge and Trump saying, I'm going to balance the budget, it actually increased. They had no impact. It was just all talk because they're not willing to make cuts that are necessary. I mean, if just from the war perspective alone, I think we got like bases in 120 countries or like 100 countries. It's like, why do we need all these military bases? Are we, we're supposed to be defending our country, and yet we have a posture that seems really imperialistic. Like either you do what we want, or we got the military base that we can make you do what we want. So if we just replaced those military bases with embassies and tried to resolve issues diplomatically, we could save hundreds of billions of dollars. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, look at this war, the Israeli war and the Ukraine war are over $100 billion. And that's, there's just no end to it. It's just, we've been on this path, like I said, since 2002, we've been on this neocon type path where we're just in constant forever wars. And we just never, and we get out of one, we jump into the next one. And it's just clearly run by the military industrial complexes. They need us to stay in these wars forever. And people are so fed up with it. And more than just that, we can't even afford it. We just keep printing cash, printing money, and the dollar keeps devaluing, and prices just appear to be so exorbitant now. So it's not, if we wanted to be an empire, we couldn't afford it. But I don't think we want to be an empire. So that's a big thing, is balancing the budget, which again has implications to foreign policy, because that's one of the reasons we don't have a balanced budget. I mentioned, overseas, I'm very anti-war. I don't want to fund any country. Because I'm Palestinian, people will say, well, of course you don't want to fund Israel. Yeah, but I don't want to fund Egypt. I don't want to fund Jordan. I mean, we have no business being there. People need to figure out how to live together as neighbors. And as long as we keep funneling weapons, we're just escalating the tension. Because if people are armed to the teeth, of course they're just going to be going at each other's throats. So we're not helping. We're bankrupting our own citizens, and we're going in the wrong direction. So I would put an end to that. I would definitely stop all these wars. We're supposed to be defending, our military is supposed to be defending America, and I don't think that's what we're doing. So those are two big issues. And with immigration, I think the starting point with immigration is you have to really appreciate the fact that the Constitution applies to everybody. I mean, this is what the words of the Constitution, when they meant citizen, they wrote citizen. When they said rights, that all people in America have rights, they meant all people. Whether you want to deport somebody or not doesn't change the fact that they're human beings. You can't tear people apart from their families, just for a violation. And then the way we're treating them is so subhuman. We're calling them the illegals, which is to me very offensive. If you want to call somebody illegal for doing, for not exactly abiding by the law, we're all probably illegals. I've had a speeding ticket. I've had like 3 or 4 in my life. Am I an illegal? That's just one thing I did, or a few things that I did wrong. And so these guys, the people that they're rounding up, a lot of them just came here to make a better life for themselves. And the idea that we could just round up a mass of people based on ethnicity and just throw them across the border is not solving anybody's problems. Because when Trump was doing that, he got pushback from employers saying, well, who's going to do all this work that we had all these immigrants that were willing to do for us now we have nobody to do all that work. That's not helping anything. So I think you need to use more common sense. Is like really figure out how many immigrants do you really need? So there's way too few visas than what we know we need. We know we need more visas than we have. We know that there's people here that we need here, but they didn't go through the process. So I want to incentivize people to go through the process. So instead of it being like a 5 or 10 year process that is just intimidating, nobody wants to do it, make it, increase the number of visas to a reasonable number, the number we actually need, and then make the process so that it's doable, so that people will say, okay, look, if I can just fill out a few forms, have them look at my background, make sure I'm good, and then I'm in, and I don't have to worry about, immigration, ICE picking me up, and my kids can go to school, and I can raise my family like a normal human being. Of course, people are going to choose that route. It's just we've made the process so intimidating, and even worse than that, it's like we're giving them a disincentive now with Trump picking up people as they're going to their interviews, as they're going through this process, trying to do things legally. He's rounding them up and shipping them, to Mexico or wherever they're going to ship them. So creating a counter incentive to go through the process. So I want to do the exact opposite with immigration. I want to know who's in the country, But if you're not here legally, we're not going to treat you like you're not a human being. You didn't follow the law. You didn't follow the process. You're going to get a ticket for that. You're going to get a fine for that, and you're going to have to leave. But here's the simple process for you to come back in to get vetted. So we know who you are, and you can be like everybody else and feel free here. So those are the three main things I want to hit on.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that's on your platform?
Well, it's one of the big things that I care about personally is I'm vegan, and I think life to me is really important. And I think one of the issues we're going to be really confronting in the near future is how much we really do value life, because it seems like the decisions being made now are so profit centered that respecting life seems to be less and less important. And I want to make sure that a big part of my platform is, I think animals should be treated better. The environment should be treated better. Our future depends on it. And I don't think the government's taking enough leadership, selling off reserves to private corporations, and I think, animals are being abused as well. And that's all important to me. I think your core values above all else, you've got to really respect life. And I think our society is becoming just so superficial that, I think we're deviating from that.
Yep, that is very understandable. And in the last episode of the Political Freedom Fighters podcast, I actually interviewed the two members of the North Carolina Green Party, and they're also vegan as well. So that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And one question I did ask them is,
well, see, that's where.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say really quick. When I ran in 2002 as a libertarian, my platform was sufficient. It resonated sufficiently with both sides of the spectrum, of the political spectrum, that most of my votes actually came from the Green, because we recognize who the enemy is. The enemy is the establishment, and they're rigging the system. And so as long as I can get that message across, that we're on the same page with the Green Party, like some of our core values are the same, some of the ways we want to implement it may differ, but that's something we can discuss. But when the system is rigged, you're guaranteed to lose, and we're playing a rigged system right now.
Yep, I agree. So one question I did ask about the Greens is what their favorite vegan meal was. So I'm gonna ask you that. What's your favorite vegan meal?
I was so tempted to when I became vegan, it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. There was one thing I craved. It was one thing I craved, and I just couldn't find a good substitute. It was lasagna. And so I just learned how to make it myself. And so now I make a really knee-buckling lasagna. That's what I call it, my knee-buckling lasagna. So that's my favorite meal. I make it. When I make it, I'll eat the tray in about 2 days. So I'll have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner until it's done. And, nowadays they've got vegan meals, vegan food that's when I started out, all they had in grocery stores was rice cakes, which is, I don't know if you ever had one. It tastes like cardboard. And that was like all there was. But they've got, they've put so much technology into mimicking meat now that they can make food taste like meat even when it's not. And I'm thinking that's hopefully the future, is that, with, creating meat from cells is an option. And I'm hoping, because it solves so many health problems, so the environmental problems, and obviously for the moral issues, which is what I care about, ethical issues. It just seems like I'd like to see the whole country trending that way. I'm not going to make laws about it. I would like to make laws protecting animals from abuse. But as far as forcing people to be vegan, obviously I'm not going to do that. But I wouldn't mind showing some leadership and explaining to people why it's beneficial.
That is awesome, man. So
It's a tough sell in where I'm at. There's a lot of pig farms here, so it's a tough sell.
I hear you. Is there anything else that's on your platform?
I'm sure there is, but I want to prioritize the things that I mentioned, because I think that's what really resonates. Getting rid of the lobbyists, obviously. Well, I should mention that should be really on the top. Is people talk about how do you deal with the lobby money, which is corrupting the system, and there's all sorts of restrictions that people are trying to add and trying to remove. Citizens United, which gives pretty much unlimited funding to candidates, which things really took a downturn after that that became law. But I have a different approach to resolving that, because whatever laws you come up with, they're always going to circumvent them. They're going to find ways to work around it. So you just have to ask yourself, what is their motivation? What is the motivation for lobbyists to spend money on Congress? I mean, they're corporations and big governments. They don't do stuff for free. They've studied it, and it obviously made sense as an investment for them. And the investment is just their return is so much higher than their investment. If they spend $1 billion lobbying, they're going to get 100 billion back in funding. So if you want to stop the lobbying, stop the motivation, which is stop corporate welfare and welfare to foreign countries, aid to foreign countries. And we're talking about aid that's military aid. We're not talking about giving money to sub-Saharan Africa. We're talking about money that's being spent. The majority of the money being spent, the highest amount is going to Israel. Now with the Ukraine war, I'm sure that's getting up there. It may even be higher temporarily because of the war, the Ukrainian war. So it's not like we're giving money to countries that need it to survive. We're giving money to perpetuate war. And so, cutting that aid, cutting corporate welfare would remove the motivation. I mean, why would corporations be funneling money into Congress if they're not going to get money back? You don't need laws. It's like, why would they do it? They're only doing it because they know there's corporate welfare. And if you end corporate welfare, then they're going to go away by themselves. So that's probably one important thing I would add to my platform.
That is awesome, man. Is there anything else in your that you want to add to your platform?
That's pretty much it. My whole point of being is the whole reason I'm running, I just want to get the people to recognize the situation we're in. We're at war with the establishment, who's just corrupt. And, the only way we can possibly beat them is the Greens can't vote Green. Libertarians can't just vote Libertarian. Republicans can't vote Republican. It's like, we just have to figure out, we have to recognize the situation. The enemy is the establishment, and we're at war with them. And we don't have much time to waste. This country's really in trouble financially right now. And there's a lot of people that are going to be going hungry, a lot of people without health care. So I think this is a really important moment in American history. Like I said, I ran 20 years ago. The sense I had of how people felt was a lot different. The sense of urgency is much higher right now. I think this is really the time when this could actually happen. When we can just get together and start voting our own interest and not be played like puppets by the establishment on both parties.
All right, that's a pretty good answer. So, how is the campaign doing? Oh, what? Sorry?
I'm sorry, how's the campaign doing?
Yeah.
Well, we're just starting out. I spent the last, 3-4 weeks getting signatures and just getting incredible amount of support that I'm way more excited than I was even in 2002. I can't wait to get out there and start campaigning. I think the kind of campaigning I want to do, which is, handshaking, face-to-face, meeting with people, it's probably on the early side to do that. So I'm more in the mode of infrastructure, doing my website, getting some social media. And then I'm going to just start really kicking in like spring and start just hitting as many, wherever I see big pockets of people, I need to be in the mix and just talking to people face to face, because I think that's going to be my strategy, is not to go after endorsements, because that's still establishment. I think the only way to really do this right is to go to the actual people and meet as many people, numbers game, just meet as many people as you can, let them know what you're all about, and give them a choice. So when they get into the ballot booth, they don't feel that they're obligated to vote for one party.
I agree with that. So,
Cool.
in terms of like social media, do you have plans on making a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I would love to do a YouTube channel. That's in the works. Yeah, I'd love to do, kind of what you're doing. I think that's what you're doing is awesome. Just bringing in new people and just having conversations. What doesn't work for me is, just one direction, just lecturing. This is what I believe. Well, great. I think what's more important is, the fact that you can relate to people, and that you're capable of reasoning, that you're not going to be just bought out by wherever the lobby money is. So I think that can only happen, by actually doing the work. It's not going to happen by just buying media ads. It's like you have to prove to people that you're willing to put in the work, and that's what I'm going to do. I'd love to do it tomorrow, but I think it's going to be a little early for telling people you got to vote for me next November. So I'll start picking up probably around the springtime.
That's awesome, man. If it's okay with you, is it all right if we talk about what happened today with the 2025 Bondi Beach shooting in Australia?
I don't know enough. I did read the headlines. I was out all day, so I didn't really get to. I mean, if you tell me the nut, I just know that I think there was a religious based attack against Jews there, but that's like all I know. So if you want to give me more information, I could give you a response. But I just know the headlines.
All right, sure. I actually do know quite a bit of information. So let me pull up
Mhm.
pull up the Wikipedia page. So yeah, this happened today in Australia in around 1848, 1847 Australian time. There was two
Mhm.
perpetrators that ended up shooting at Bondi Beach, which is actually a famous beach in Australia. It was actually a
Mhm.
father and
Yeah.
son. The father was like 50 years old, and the son was like 24-year-old. The father was eventually like shot dead, and the other perpetrator, the son, ended up getting neutralized. But unfortunately,
Mhm.
on the fatality side, there were 16 people, including one of the perpetrators, that died, and there were 43 others, including one of the other perpetrators, that were also getting injured. One of the
Mhm.
survivors actually ended up being a hero, being able to disarm one of the gunmen. I believe this
Mhm.
person who disarmed one of the gunmen was Muslim, is what was Arab, I believe, and he actually did end
Yeah.
up getting shot twice in the arm, but luckily that guy did manage to survive. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, the youngest victim of the tragedy was, I believe, 10 years old, and one of those among killed was a Holocaust survivor. And I
Mhm.
believe a French guy was
What
also.
was the Yeah, what was the motivation? Like, have they mentioned anything about that? I mean, obviously it was religious, but was there any statements, manifesto or anything left behind?
Not that I know of as of this time. All we know is it's mainly motivated by anti-Semitism,
Hmm.
and
Yeah. So I mean, clearly, I think there is a rise. In my opinion, I wouldn't say clearly, but in my opinion, there is a rise in anti-Semitism, and I've seen it, or at least the expression of anti-Semitism, since the Gaza attack. Um, so you can't say that they're not correlated. There is a correlation, and I think my opinion is the insistence on Israel to say that they are the representative of the Jews, that Zionism uh, is Judaism, basically. That if you're against Israel, you're against the Jews, is part of the problem, because Israel is a state, right? It's not a religion; it's a state. So you can be, and there are many Jews that are anti-Zionist. But when you tell people, as Netanyahu keeps telling them, that no, we represent the Jews, And then people look at what Israel is doing and saying, well, I don't like what you're doing, and you're telling me you represent the Jews. Then all of a sudden, I'm transferring that distaste for Israel to distaste for Jews, which is incredibly unfair. And I don't want to like make this like a political point for the Palestinian side at all. I'm just saying this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that there's a lot of Jews that are being tarnished by what Israel's doing. And I think this may be, I don't know what the motivation of this person is, the people that did this. I don't know what their motivation is. So I'm just speaking in general terms, that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and that's horrible. And that's a step backwards for humanity. But Israel's playing a role in this because they're by equating themselves with Jews, they're making people being forced to tell themselves, well, I don't like Israel. Israel is Jews, therefore I don't like Jews, which is incredibly unfair. And of course I'm going to, I shouldn't even have to say that I denounce this. This is a horrible thing that happened from, everything that you've said, everything that I've read. So, whether it was a Muslim or not, I mean, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. The establishment, which is the Israeli government, the American government, this is what they like to do. They like to play the people against each other, right? They want the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews to be fighting each other. This is what keeps them going. As long as we're distracted fighting each other, as long as inside of modern day Israel is Jews fighting against Muslims, fighting against Muslims and Christians, as long as that's happy, they get to make their billions and trillions. Like Israeli stock market's going through the roof now because all these weapons manufacturers are making a bundle of what's going on there. So this is what they want. They want the people to be fighting against each other. So this is a loss for everybody. And I'm really glad that you're saying that a Muslim came to defend Jews in this situation, to show that the people really aren't fighting against each other. It's all being manipulated.
That is good. Yep, no problem, man. And I just realized today's day.
Did you have a comment? You brought it up. I was just wondering if you had a comment about it.
Yeah, no, the attack was just horrible. And actually, now that I think about it, Bondi Beach, there's actually like a famous TV show called Bondi Rescue where like lifeguards go in, where like it's like a series where it goes through like the journey of lifeguards, basically going through like rescuing people and basically doing their lifeguard things. And I realized that this, because of this incident, might have potentially been recorded. I know there's like some like there's like some footage out there. One of the bystanders was like saying, was when one of the perpetrators got like shot, they was like, die, C-word, die. And But yeah, I think I'm always thinking about with Bondi Rescue. I'm sure there's going to be a big episode on that show about them going through the entire incident. It's really tough.
Yeah, and I think it's just violence is it escalates. It's like when I think there's just so much animosity, so much division between people right now that a lot of people are resorting. You had Charlie Kirk being assassinated the other day. So that violence is definitely on the increase. And I think, having all this war, seeing dead people on your screens, on your phones every day, is just devaluing human life to a real extent. So it is pretty sad. And I think I've heard of Bondi Beach. Maybe they've had great white shark attacks there before or something. I don't, but it does sound like it was a pretty popular beach. So I'm sure they're that's really put a dark cloud over that area.
Yeah, and if any of you guys are hearing any wind outside, it is actually storming in my neck of the woods, so I do apologize. So yeah, I realize today's date is December 14th, 2025, and it's actually the 13th anniversary of the Sandy Hook shooting. I didn't even realize. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that tragedy was terrible. There was even like a whole bunch of people saying it was a hoax and all that stuff. It was horrible.
Yeah. Alex Jones, I think, had to pay his fortune because he was saying that.
Indeed. So let's go. So I guess since we do got quite a bit of time left, let's do something fun. Let's go over what you like and what you don't like. So
Right.
what's your favorite movie?
It's a movie probably haven't heard of it. Didn't it's by the Gilliam from Monty Python. It's an old film called Brazil. Have you heard of it?
I don't think so.
It's one of those classics. Yeah, it didn't really become a box office hit, but it was about a it's it's in the future, but it's like a very dysfunctional future. So Gilliam's Monty Python is they're very it's obviously humorous, but it presents what the world could look like in the future, where you have an incompetent government that tries to control people, but they're really incompetent at doing it, and it pokes fun at tyranny basically. So I think it's important to do that, is to recognize that the government does have evil tendencies, but that they're also incompetent. And I think that film laid out that message really well. And you need that to understand that this battle is winnable, that the people can defeat the government because they are incompetent. And making fun of them is the way to go. And it obviously is going to piss them off. So I would say Brazil is my favorite movie of all time.
That's pretty good to hear. What's your favorite drink?
You mean alcohol?
Alcohol works.
Yeah, it won't work. So I grew up in Saudi Arabia, where alcohol was illegal. So I never got into the habit of drinking alcohol, and I'm also a Muslim, and so what's interesting about alcohol is so my first time I ended up in the U.S., I told you I was at Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana, and it's a religious Catholic school, right? So I actually didn't know that. I just I was reading off of brochures about universities, and I just liked the Notre Dame brochure because they emphasized that they wanted you to develop spiritually and as a human being, whereas like the brochures from UCLA was like all the cheerleaders. So they were like pushing their eye candy on me. So I went the route of Notre Dame. And so when I got there, it turns out it's like Catholic school is unusual. Most schools aren't religious. I thought all the schools were either Protestant or Catholic. This just happened to be Catholic, but they're like really hardcore Catholic. So they had these dorms. You were sort of sequestered in these dorm rooms or dorm buildings, and each student could choose which floor they could be on. So they had the first floor when you enter the dorm was they had a rector, which was a priest, and he sort of make sure that you didn't do anything unholy. So it was all the goody two shoes on that floor, the first floor, and they called that rector's row. It was a big row, and the rector just made sure everything was under control. And then there was a floor underneath it, the basement, and that's where all the potheads hung out. And that was Skid Row. So you had Rector's Row, which is all the goody two shoes, and then you had Skid Row with all the potheads. And so I'm coming into this environment knowing nothing about American culture. And so, people at that time were like choosing which cliques they wanted to be part of. And for me, it's like, coming from Saudi Arabia, where alcohol is illegal and pot was illegal, I didn't see the difference between the two. So from my perspective, they're both going to hell. So I didn't judge either one of them. And so I say that they're both going to hell. I didn't think either one of them were going to hell. In other words, to me, there wasn't like the goody two shoes thought that they were better because, they just drank, but they didn't smoke pot. Whereas at least the potheads were not as judgmental about it. And I think that tells I think that helped form me also as a person is to not judge people just by some aspect of you know how they act that is not a moral issue. This is a personal issue. So it's, for me, a moral issue is that I would care about is how you act towards others. I'm going to judge you on how you act towards others, but how you act and how you live your own life is your business, and I'm not the person to tell you how to live your life. You have one life, you got to figure it out on your own. And so going into that environment, I was really comfortable hanging out with the goody two shoes because they had drive, they wanted to excel, they wanted to do their best, and I liked that. And then the guys in Skid Row were just very humble people and very philosophical people, and they weren't driven by achievement. They were driven just on living life, making the most out of their life. So that was an early on lesson that I learned to really appreciate people. And I think that sort of carried on into my politics and why I'm a libertarian is I really enjoy people being unique and being themselves. And and this is what's so ugly about politics right now is that you look at our politicians and they just don't seem real. They don't seem like real people. They because what they're saying isn't really what they're going to do. They're just bought out. So that tells you a little bit about maybe why I ended up going politically the direction I'm in. Is I really appreciate and value differences in our society, and as long as you're not harming anybody else, I really want to defend people's right to be who they are.
That's understandable. So
I'll tell you another thing that we were talking about random things. The way I spend my Mondays is I joined a bowling league, right? So bowling is like, this is how you really get to hang out with like working America. These are the lunch pail guys that just work all day, and bowling is like their big deal. And I just try to just fit in with everybody else. Like nobody knows my background. I have a law degree, graduate in computer science. I don't tell anybody anything. I just hang out and just make stupid jokes with everybody there. And to me, that's what life is really about. It's just like experiencing without judging. And you end up learning a lot, because, maybe they don't have the highest education, but they're smart as anyone, so, you can learn from anybody. So, I decided to do a newsletter for the group because, we were just getting together and bowling and then just going home. So I started to do a newsletter because I just enjoy people getting to know each other, which there was 100 people every Monday bowling, and they just bowl and go home. And so, just creating that little community of bowlers, I think really made everything more enjoyable for everyone.
that's awesome. Has anyone ever gone like a perfect 300?
So like 2 weeks ago, the team we were playing against is 5 against 5. One guy who never got anywhere near it. He bowled the first. You need 12 strikes to get a 300. He bowled 10, and then I started filming him, and he just barely missed the 11th one. And so I had like pictures of him. He was like holding his head and all that. And I put that all in the newsletter, and he loved it because it was a really dramatic moment. He said he couldn't sleep that whole night. He was just so excited. It's a lot more exciting when somebody who's never done anything like that before gets so close than, because there's people that have had 11, 12, 300 perfect games. And to them, it's just another game. But so the drama was like real exciting. And then last Monday, a week ago, somebody got a 300. It was a guy who was a guest. So I didn't get to get all that drama, but it's exciting. I mean, it's weird is when you get in these little bubbles, it seems like it's the most important thing in the world. I mean, everybody has their little bubble, whether it's surfing or jujitsu or whatever it is. You got that bubble where this is the most important thing in the world. And this is like one of, 7 leagues in small Wilmington. And everybody treats it like this is like the World Series or something. So I love that about it. It's like what I love most in life is when people really get invested emotionally in what they're doing, and they really care. Because the worst thing in life is when people get complacent and just go through life like they don't realize this is the only one you get. So that was a good question, and yeah, we got one last week and almost got one 2 weeks ago.
That is
And I never made it through. The most I've gotten was about um, 8 or 9 strikes and I just got close to the end, and it just it just got too much pressure.
I understand completely. So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I might as well throw in. I have an animal rescue. I've had it for about 12 years ago. For 12 years, I um, built it out, and it's in the West Bank, and we rescue. At first, we rescued dogs and donkeys. Those were the most abused animals in the West Bank. Dogs are not really allowed inside homes, so they're all out in the street. I think South America and Central America might have similar situations where there's a lot of dogs on the street, and nobody was really taking care of them. So I built up this little sanctuary, and we started rescuing them, and we also the donkeys when they're used for labor, and when they're no longer able to work, they just throw them out in the street. So we picked up the donkeys from the street and brought them to the sanctuary. We ended up with about 70 dogs and 15 donkeys. And the donkeys were my favorite because they're incredibly intelligent, but they're really stoic. So they're watching everything, and they see where their opportunities are to get extra green grass and like work their way around to where the grapes are, so they could get some grapes. So they outsmarted the groundskeeper like on a daily basis, just about. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. When the war started with Gaza, it became almost impossible really to manage it long distance. So we ended up getting really lucky. This SPCA International worked with us, and we were able to lease a 747. And we evacuated 70 dogs. All 70 dogs, we evacuated them to the U.S. on a big 747. It was an incredible adventure because it required taking the dogs in crates through the West Bank, through all these roads that were torn apart, to cross the wall, the dividing wall, to get into Israel, and all sorts of things went wrong along the way. But somehow, we got all the dogs on the plane.
That's awesome. I hope they all got new owners.
Yeah, once we landed in New York, they went through a little bit of quarantine time and made sure all their shots are up to date. And then we had little, I guess they call them mud hoppers. So little small planes would take them from like 6, 7 at a time to sanctuaries all around the U.S. And from there, they got adopted out. And so I've been following up with them, and they've I think pretty much all of them. There's like 3 or 4 of them that are on a ranch, and so they're doing okay. They didn't get adopted, but they still got a good life, and they got a second or probably even third chance in life from where they were. I mean, these are really lucky dogs.
That is great. So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I don't know. It's nice to have a conversation. I'm just curious. Where do your politics lie? So I've spoken a heck of a lot. Do you have any sort of pushback on what I was saying?
No.
Like, what did you think of my immigration stance?
I liked your immigration stance, and I actually liked your ideology. I actually liked what you stood for, and I'm a very open-minded person. I'm actually a third partyist myself. I believe in third parties above, like, literally the two-party system, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. What is your take on what's going on in Israel?
I really am frustrated with what's been going on with Israel. We should have not gone into a war with Iran. 2,000 people died freaking unnecessarily, and all in the sake of quote-unquote destroying Iran's nuclear program. And I'm sure there's some not only have some nuclear remnants have survived most likely, but Russia and Iran made a deal where Russia was basically going to help Iran build nukes. not only did we not decimate Iran, we just made Iran and Russia closer. So I am very furious.
It did, but it didn't make sense. It's like, what was the purpose of what we did? Because we didn't solve it. Trump was saying, "Oh, we didn't destroy squat." So I'm just, what did we benefit? And like you said, instead of like Russia should be our ally. Why are we screwing with everybody? Why aren't we, instead of escalating tension by bombing Iran, why aren't we trying to find a way to de-escalate? Iran has been saying that they want to be part of a non-proliferation agreement. They want the Middle East to be denuclearized. And we don't. We're the ones standing in the way. We don't want the Middle East to be denuclearized. We want Israel to be the only nuclear power. And I think people are fed up with it. It's like, this is not serving American interests. And it's bankrupting us. It's creating enemies all over the world, for no reason. So I see that you're upset by it. And I got to say that that's I think the correct reaction is it makes no sense.
Yeah, and I would apply it to like literally like with not just like Israel, but with everywhere, with Ukraine. So much for the peace talks working, and with the United States recently.
Venezuela?
Yeah.
What the heck are we doing in Venezuela?
Yeah, they just recently ceased an oil tanker. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like they thought that they were scaring Venezuelans, but instead we just got them angry unnecessarily. And for what? For some oil?
I don't know. I mean, they're claiming it's for drugs. I've seen zero proof. I think you're right. I think it is about oil. And it's one desperate move after the other. They're just flailing. It's this government is unhinged. And I'm hoping people will just at some point just say enough is enough. It's just like, how much are we going to take of this? Because I think the Republican Party's divided over this. And I think the Democratic Party was divided over this in the last election. Like I said, the results are showing that the Democratic Party's support for Israel may have cost them the election. So, let's keep pushing. Let's change the system.
Yeah, we really have to revive the anti-war movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really so disappointed that there was no Rage Against the War Machine rally for 2025 this year. I would have loved to watch that on the stream.
Yeah. Well, Trump campaigned on being the anti-war president. And look what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because they know it's what people want. It's just they're not delivering.
Yeah, maybe I might do an episode featuring guests featuring guests that are anti-war. Maybe doing something like that.
Absolutely. I think that'd be pretty popular. I think that'd resonate with a lot of people because it doesn't serve our interests, and we're spending just a ton of money on it. I think it's driving a lot of what's hurting our dollar. Is all this money that we're spending. I mean, that's what bankrupted the Soviet Union, is all the money they were spending in Afghanistan. And now we're doing the same thing. And I don't think the Chinese are doing it. I don't think the Chinese are bombing countries. So, they're focused on their economy, and we're sitting here bombing people. So, we're kind of competing on the world stage with one hand tied behind our back, because out of every $2, $1's got to go to the military.
Yeah, it's insane.
So what's your take on sports? Well, I got you.
Sports.
Do you follow any?
I actually don't, but I actually am working with a bunch of people called the Pirate Party, which is where they focus on copyright, and we actually talked about sports. And I'm actually helping people start up the North Carolina Pirate Party affiliate, and yeah, we're actually about to add a sports plank onto that party's platform soon because I talked to it with the National Party, and they seem to like it after hearing their stances on it after rejecting a plank on dueling. But we're actually going to be adding a new plank on sports, so that's going to be fun.
What's the plank going to be?
I think it's going to be about like promoting sports, adding like gyms, and a whole bunch of basically promoting a bunch of stuff that basically allows people to encourage exercise in order to like make people healthier and combat obesity. And
Yeah, I think that's super important, and to have people to motivate people to achieve goals. What I find distressing about sports is so I like I said I went to Notre Dame, and if you followed sports, Notre Dame's a really big college football school, and they have this stupid playoff system. Like the biggest story in college football at the moment, and now we're getting into the playoffs. And I'm not going to get into the details, so you don't need to know a lot of this background, but just the high level. They're this committee, the establishment, was trying to select 12 teams to go into this playoff, right? And so the establishment team that that was supported by all the bigwigs is Alabama. And so Alabama did not have the best team. They had some really bad losses in the season, but they were part of the establishment. And then there's these two other teams that weren't part of the establishment, Notre Dame and Miami, who they had fighting each other for the last playoff spot. And they kept attacking each other. Miami kept attacking Notre Dame, saying, we're better than them. We beat them. We deserve to go. Notre Dame saying, we're better. So they had these two guys fighting against these two teams, fighting tooth and nail, hating each other, trying to get that last spot. And freaking Alabama was sitting there with more losses than anybody in the history of the playoffs. They had 3 losses, more losses than anybody that's ever been in the playoffs. And while these two guys were fighting, they snuck Alabama into the playoffs. And to me, that was like, there you go. That's how I see the world, is the Alabamas of the world are trying to get the Miamis and the Notre Dames, the guys on the outside, to fight each other for the crumb of being the last team in, while the establishment just coasts in, even though they don't deserve it. So, I mean, I think that's what I enjoy about watching sports, is I enjoy making it bigger than it really is, making it signify something bigger. Like the World Cup's coming up, that's on the international stage. That's what people do. Is like, for Morocco, Morocco 4 years ago, or 3 years now, an Arab North African team was colonized by Europe, and they were just maligned for dozens of years, and so when they had their chance, and everybody kept belittling them and rigging the system against them, and then in the last World Cup, they took on the two teams that really are countries that really malign them the most, which is Portugal and Spain. Spain, so they beat both of them. And so for the people, it was more than just a game. It was vindication for years of colonization. And, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it sort of makes you feel a little bit better when you see something like that, when the underdog, it proves that the underdog can win sometimes. And sometimes you just need something like that to keep you going.
That's awesome. So, anyways, is there anything else you want to talk about before I end this episode?
Yeah, let me finish that thought up really quick. So the problem I have with football, as opposed to what you were saying about sports that'll help people develop physically and mentally and stuff like that, and having goals, is the problem with football is it's a win-lose game. It's like the guys you're playing against have to lose in order for you to win. And that's a mindset I think is really dangerous. That's what creates tribalism and dehumanization and vilification, is when you feel you can't get to where you want to go unless somebody else has to lose. I'm not sure I want that to be our lesson. So I'd rather have sports where you kind of everybody just gets better than when it's a zero-sum game.
All right, understandable. Anyways, Maad, I would like to thank you for coming on to this podcast with you all today, and I will be linking all the sources of your campaign in the description.
Appreciate being on here.
That's awesome. I will link. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so you got my website. Website is getmaad.org. Getmaad.org.
Yes, and I will be linking that and all of his other socials in the description below in case you guys want to like support his campaign. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell if you're new to the YouTube channel. And yeah, with that being said, I hope you all enjoy, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.